Welcome back to another video, guys. Of course, my name is Gareth from Pod Cameras, and you join me once again looking at a whole roster of Sony lenses, all kinds of different ones. We did a video about landscape photography using a bunch of these different lenses, portrait photography, and then today we're looking at some of the lenses that Sony have sent us which fit into some other categories. We've got some wildlife, kind of sporty lenses. First things first, let's talk about wildlife, because I've got a couple of lenses here that I really want to talk about. The first one is the 70 to 350mm lens. Now this works out really well on something like the A6400, which is what I've been using it on, which makes it roughly about 105 to 475mm. So it works kind of like a 100 to 400, but with a bit of an extra reach there as well, which is really nice. And the main thing that I love about this lens, especially when it comes to something like wildlife or something like that, is just how actually small it is. It does extend as you zoom, but even then it's still really not that big at all. And it's so lightweight, which pairs perfectly with something like the A6400, but you're still gonna get really nice image quality from it, which works really, really well. But it makes wildlife photography, and sport of course as well, but certainly wildlife photography, which is how I've been using it, just so much easier, you know, to carry it around, to use it handheld. You know, obviously it's a two-hander, but it just makes it so easy to use. It's so light in the hand. You can carry around the camera without really worrying too much about it. You can go out walking with it. You don't have to put it back in the bag because it's too heavy for your hand. And you can keep it up at your eye for much, much longer, which I really appreciate, because wildlife photography is a lot about patience. And I find myself often looking at a bird or whatever it is, waiting for it to do something interesting. And I've got the camera up at my eye, and with a lighter lens like this, it just works so well. But of course, that's not the only lens or camera that I've been using. You probably can already see in frame, I've got this, the 200 to 600mm G lens, which we're using with the A9. Now this obviously is a different type of lens entirely. It's much bigger. It is weightier. There's no getting around it. It is weightier. So I generally have been putting this back in my bag if I'm gonna then walk to the next kind of area that I want to start doing some photography. But it's still light enough for me to use it handheld. I've not actually used a tripod at all. And of course with the A9, it's much easier to bump up that ISO to expose it properly, but I can still use a nice sort of reasonable shutter speed, so I'm not getting any camera shake. But of course, I don't need to worry as much about that because of the image stabilization in the lens. That makes it much easier to use it handheld. Now, like I say, it is heavier, and it has been a little bit heavier, especially I think because I'm comparing it directly with this lens, which is so light. But otherwise, it's been really, really nice lens to use, and the actual image quality is so, so good. It's kind of a great lens for, certainly for wildlife, but for sport as well. Now the A9, which is actually a really nice camera to use for this kind of thing, obviously gives you that high frame rate for taking photos, but also that tracking autofocus, which just makes it so easy to get birds in flight or fast moving animals, anything like that. It just makes it a lot easier to actually track them and to take the photos. Now that leads me on to one of the biggest tips I have for wildlife photography, something that I think is really important. We've talked about this in longer videos specifically about wildlife, or specifically about how to get the most out of that, but it's about practice. It is literally just about practice makes perfect. And for me, I think the biggest tip I can give is to head out to your local kind of nature parks, or even just a park with a pond or something like that, and take photos. It may seem boring, but of swans and ducks and all that kind of stuff, because you can practice composition, you can practice tracking with the autofocus, you can practice all of that stuff without the stress of the fact that you just walked 3 miles to get to this location to shoot some deer, you know, with the camera. And now suddenly you're finding it harder to bring the camera up, to compose, to get the zoom, all that kind of stuff, to get, you know, a non-blurry, nice sharp photo, waiting for the right light. That's one of my biggest tips, is start local, start easy. There's nothing wrong with that at all till you get the hang of it, and then move on to those harder shoots where you've already kind of got your skills honed a little bit, and you can go out pretty confident that you're going to be able to get the photo as soon as it presents itself. And that's the other thing to take in mind when it comes to wildlife photography. It's a lot about patience. You know, I've probably been a little bit rushed, to be honest, while I've been out using these, because we're trying to get through all these lenses. But with wildlife photography, in an ideal world, you'd pick a spot and you'd wait and see how these animals move and where the light goes, and you know, you try and pick a spot that you know they're going to come to, but you want to wait for that perfect moment. You know, the photo's out there, It's just waiting for it to come to you. Sounds a bit cliche, but waiting for it to come to you rather than getting there. Right, I've got 20 minutes, snap, 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 back out. You need to have that patience to find that photograph. If you can work with the light and then you can wait till an animal enters that area, perfect, absolutely perfect. So that's kind of a whistle-stop tour of some of these extra Sony lenses that we've been working with. Of course, if you have any questions about them, absolutely pop it down in the comments. There's full links to all of these lenses, everything we've been talking about down in the description, so you can go and check that out for yourself. I'd love to hear any tips or anything you might have for macro, for wildlife, for shooting handheld, those kinds of things. Lenses that you like, cameras that you like, anything you like down in the comments. I'd love to hear all about that. Get a conversation going. Let's chat, because that's exciting. I love sharing in the excitement of what excites you as well. So let me know down in the comments. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. And as always, thanks for watching.